Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, time for a clambake. In the last episode, we heard Priscilla Presley say that the Colonel told Elvis that he should get Larry Geller out of his life, that Larry used some sort of technique to manipulate his thinking. Elvis argued that this wasn't the case. He was truly interested in his readings. We've also heard Priscilla say that since Elvis has known Larry Geller, he hasn't been the same person. That he's changed, that he's introverted. She says everybody has noticed this. And we've heard that on the set of Clambake, which is where we're at right now, in late March 1967, the week after Easter, Elvis is filming Clambake, and he's up to all kinds of shenanigans. They're throwing water balloons at each other. They're having pie fights. Elvis threw a cream pie into Bill Bixby's face. So they're up to a lot of childlike mischief. No one's losing any money. No time on production is being delayed. But there are hijinks. And we're going to talk more about all that when we get back from our song. And our song today is His Heart's Desire. Hello, Gunn. Hello, Marion. Hello, Keith. Thank you all for joining me.
His time came too early, the curtain fell too fast. Before he was ready, before we could grasp the man behind the myth, the ache behind the fame. He wanted something simple, not fortune, not acclaim. 6 is 3, the threats came down like rain. He spoke of love, not fear, through the shadow and the strain. I wanna live to be old, he said with quiet grace, to remember her love and see our children's face. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he given in his best. No mansion in the sky, no diamond parade, just the warmth of a hand and the life they made. A whisper of laughter, a child's sleepy sigh, that was the dream he carried inside. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place call home. To be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given his best.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today, it's time for a Clambake. And the first person we're going to hear from today is somebody that we have not yet heard from. And it's one of Elvis's co-stars. And we are in the last week of March, the 26th, Sunday. That was Easter. And now we're moving into Monday, the 27th, and on into the week and into the next week as Elvis catches up on the filming of Clambake. And this is Elvis leaving for work the morning of the 27th. He's got to get down to that studio. They've already lost a lot of time on this one. They got to get to filming. This is Elvis from a previous movie with Shelley Fabares. And again, I'm probably mispronouncing names here, so I'm just going to call her Shelley for the rest of the program. But you can see how beautiful she was. And Elvis is looking pretty cool on this motorcycle in his button-down shirt with 3/4 length sleeves. Notice that those sleeves, they don't come all the way down to his wrist. They're sewn to only come down to the middle of his forearm. I believe it's a denim shirt, based on what looks like some double stitching up the middle of one of the sleeves. Not positive. Probably some blue jeans that he's wearing. And Shelley's got her arms wrapped around him, sitting behind him on the motorcycle. It's like both of them, their hair is blowing in the wind. And Elvis looks pretty satisfied with himself. And Shelley looks happy and excited. Marion says this movie is girl happy. I'm not good at the movies, so it absolutely could be. So we're going to go with Marion. It's girl happy. And Shelley says, yes, Elvis was a wonderful man. I truly loved him. We had a lovely relationship because I did 3 movies with him, spread out over a number of years. You know how you meet some people, and right away, when you meet them, you kind of go, hello, and you just connect. You don't know what it is, you just connect. That happened for the two of us. It was not a romantic thing. I had, in fact, just gotten married 17 days before. Many years after meeting Elvis Presley for the first time, Shelley remembers that first time was 17 days after her first marriage. 17 days. And she was head over heels about her husband. She loved him with all of her heart. But she remembers years and years later, it was 17 days. And she also remembers that they had an immediate connection. Something that can't truly be put into words. They met. They didn't really have to say anything. They just knew. They knew that they could trust each other with certain things. They knew that they could talk to each other. They knew that they could be friends. And Terry says that he watched Girl Happy yesterday. And Marion says the last time she saw Girl Happy, she was a child, and she loved it. Shelley co-starred in Spin Out with Elvis Presley. During the production, the film was titled Never Say Yes. Now, I thought for a minute that might have something to do with a James Bond movie that was titled Never Say Never Again, but it doesn't. And then I thought, well, maybe there's another movie called Never Say Never. There isn't. Completely original title. Doesn't reference anything. It was the working title that they used on the scripts. Never Say Yes. Colonel Parker suggested 2 other titles for this movie. Apparently, they could not use Never Say Yes for whatever reason, or they didn't like it. They needed to have a different name. A lot of people threw names in the hat, but the Colonel, he put in 2. And one was Jim Dandy. And the other one was Clambake. They didn't choose either one of those names. Never Say Yes became Spin Out in the United States, and it became California Holiday in the UK. And the Colonel's suggested title of Clambake, well, it was saved for another film. And that's the film they're making right now, together. The 3rd film that Shelley is in with Elvis, Clambake. And Shelley says, I loved doing those pictures. It's a happy memory for me. First of all, they were great fun. They weren't great, but they were great fun. So Shelley acknowledges that these movies weren't of the greatest artistic integrity. This was not Oscar material. But that making these movies, well, that was great fun. And if she was having fun making these movies, I've got to assume that Elvis himself was having fun making the movies. So Elvis didn't have an issue making the movies. The work itself was fine with him. We know he's got issues with this movie. But they're not about the working conditions or the people or any of that. He's fine with all of that. It's about the script and the quality of the songs. And Linda says that she was only 7 when Elvis passed, and it was the movies that she loved and made her love Elvis. And Pat says she remembers that day so well. It was the saddest day ever. Couldn't believe he was gone. And Marion says that she didn't know for years how good Elvis looks. Her mother's records didn't have a cover. That's an interesting story, Marion, because a lot of people didn't keep the covers with their records. And if you didn't have the cover, how would you know what they looked like? I got a big batch of story records as a child, like from Walt Disney and such, but they didn't have any covers. And it took me forever to figure out that they matched up to movies that I might have seen. So I understand exactly what you're saying, Mary. And Colleen says that they had an Elvis birthday party on Sunday for her aunt's 70th birthday party, and everything was Elvis, decorating, cake, and all the gifts. That sounds like a lot of fun. And Gunn says that the movies are a great way to discover Elvis, and that she did too. She's seen them all. And that's how she's discovered Elvis. Now, Larry Geller, he says one day, shortly after work resumed, Elvis stormed into the trailer. This is the trailer where he's getting his makeup and his hair done, probably Elvis's personal trailer. And as he sat having his hair styled, he railed about what was wrong with the spiritual teachings. These darn masters, they're trying to control people's minds. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to hypnotize people. They want to control you for their own purposes. They have motives. And then he stopped and he looked at Larry and he said, "Forgive me. Don't take it personally. It's me." And then Larry says that later that day, because we'd heard that part of the story. We heard that in a previous episode. So if you missed any of those previous episodes, be sure that you head back into the archive, which you could do by looking directly underneath this video for the little black circle that says Hillbilly Cat History. And it's got a gold outline of a cat. Click that button, you'll go to the channel, and the channel will give you choices, such as shorts, lives, videos, and posts. And you can search through the archive and find all kinds of stories about Elvis that if you haven't seen all these videos, then you haven't heard. And make sure that you like, you subscribe, you do all those great YouTube things, and tell everybody that you know that loves Elvis all about Hillbilly Cat History, so that we can all join here together to talk about Elvis. Now let's get back to what Larry said about later that day. Elvis came into the trailer. He's had this blow up about the things that he's been reading, and he and Larry have been sharing together. And he says, "Larry, they're trying to hypnotize people. They want to control you." And then he says, "Forgive me. Don't take it personally. It's me." Which may mean that he thought maybe Larry was trying to do some kind of hypnotism on him, because that's what, according to Priscilla, the Colonel's been telling him. And maybe through this questioning, he's determined it's not true. But Larry says later that day, during a break-in shooting, I stood on the soundstage and witnessed a spectacle I hadn't seen in a couple of years. Elvis and the Memphis Mafia chasing one another around the sets, chucking water balloons, and screaming like unruly children. So these things that are happening on set, these shenanigans and childish behavior that Elvis and the guys are participating in and that others have commented on, it is happening on the set of Clambake. But Larry himself is saying he hasn't seen Elvis do that in a couple of years. Okay, what this means is that when Larry came into the group, Elvis was doing things like this. And then after Larry had been in the group for a little while, Larry didn't see Elvis doing things like that anymore. Elvis stopped doing those kind of childish things. He wasn't throwing water balloons or participating in pie fights. But now he is. Right after there's been this blow up, and the colonel has told him not to trust Larry anymore. Suddenly, Elvis is back to the way that he used to be before Larry. So the things that Priscilla said about Elvis being different since he had met Larry, that turns out to be true. It sounded kind of like Priscilla was paranoid. And I know that there's a lot of us that have issues trusting Priscilla. But in this case, her observation matches Larry's. And it supports the fact that whatever Larry and Elvis were doing in their relationship, whatever they were talking about, it changed Elvis. And I don't know that he was introverted, as Priscilla said, but he was certainly different. And he was not participating in these behaviors, which Larry himself is saying now he is. Linda says that Elvis was a great actor and his comical timing was brilliant. And Pat says Elvis always wanted to have fun. Well, Pat, it sounds like for a couple of years there, while he and Larry were on the spiritual quest, Elvis didn't want to have fun. And maybe that's another reason that the guys didn't like Larry all that much. They like to have fun. And Linda says that Elvis was a deep thinker. Shelley, back to Shelley's memories. Shelley says, I loved Elvis and I still love him and I miss him every day. Red West, he said at the very end of Clambake that up till that time, Arthur Nadell, who's the director for Clambake, he still hadn't been hit by a cream pie. And I think he felt a little bit left out. So on the last day of shooting, he came dressed in a raincoat and rain hat, virtually inviting us to hit him. We didn't. But that night, as we had the end of the movie party, he changed into a suit. And after the party, he was going to go to a PTA meeting. PTA is a Parent Teachers Association meeting. So that would be a meeting at his school, at the school of his children. And Red says, well, we all made a little speech about how we loved him and what a great guy he was to work with and what a great artist he was. Well, he gets choked up and begins to say thanks. And that's when we hit him with a pie right in the face. At last, he got the pie he wanted, but he was fully dressed. According to Red, it sounds like everybody on the set got a pie in the face at some point. And Red's told us Bill Bixby did, and so did the director, Arthur Nadell. And of course, they picked the worst possible time for Arthur that they could put that pie into his face. Now, Bill Bixby, who you can see in this picture, And this is not the greatest picture in the world, but you can see Bill Bixby at the far left. I don't have the name of the co-star in the suit that Elvis also wears, but he's also in this picture. Definitely should have looked that one up. I read it like 15 times, and I cannot remember. Then you can see this sign that looks like they're standing in front of a restaurant, and it says that the hotel's annual Clambake is about to happen. So obviously this is where part of the name of the movie comes from. And then you can see Shelley, and she's got her arm around Elvis, and Elvis has his arm around her. And here you can make a judgment about if the weight that Elvis showed up with at 200 pounds on March 5th, if it's showing here in this scene, which was probably filmed last week of March or the first week of April, after Elvis had suffered a concussion. But Bill Bixby says Elvis and the Colonel were like Frick and Frack when they get together. They really were. They were great put-on artists. The Colonel got me in on a mind-reading gag, and we worked it out with signals. Elvis and the Colonel and me. One of the guys would tell me a word that he was thinking of, and I'd never go near the Colonel, but he would get it. It was a great way of entertaining ourselves. So in Bill Bixby's story, Elvis and the guys are not the only ones playing around. The Colonel's there. And they've got enough time on their hands that the Colonel and Bill Bixby and Elvis work out a little mind-reading gag. And I participated in gags like this, practical jokes, or they're not practical jokes, they're more like magic demonstrations. They look like a magic trick. And you can do them, you point at certain things and it has a meaning to the other person. And you're able to communicate back and forth without any words and without obvious signals. Other people don't see the signals, or they don't recognize what the signals are. And then it looks like you're reading each other's minds. Sonny West talks about similar things that he and the Colonel did together on sets like this to other people that they did together to make it look like they had some kind of mind thing going on. So this isn't unusual. The Colonel's done this before. Now, I don't know if the Colonel is hanging out more on set with Elvis because of the concussion incident. Maybe he's decided he's going to take a much more hands-on approach during this particular movie. He already knows Elvis doesn't like this movie and is irritated by it. So it could be. It could be. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Elizabeth says that Shelley was very loyal to Elvis, and she would never say anything that he trusted her with. Or that she said she would never say anything that he trusted her with. And I believe that I've ever heard her say anything that was compromising about Elvis in any way. And Linda says that she really believes Elvis was interested in his purpose before Larry. And I know that feeling myself. And Marion says that she believes so too. Hi, Luann. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Let's take a look at another picture. And this is the Clambake itself from the movie. So this was the big party that they were leading up to. And you can see Elvis playing a guitar. And he's wearing like a rust. Maybe that's supposed to be a red outfit. But in this picture, it looks rust colored with a cream jacket over the top of it. I think that guitar is, I don't think it's a Stratocaster, a Fender Stratocaster, but it looks similar to a Stratocaster. And you can see that someone in the band behind him is playing basically the same instrument in a slightly different color. And there's a lot of Hawaiian decorations going on. And it's all very odd because the movie takes place in Florida. And I used to live in Florida, and I can tell you that there's not as many Hawaiian decorations there as they're making it look like here. Now, they obviously may have set this up special just to have this clam bake. But within the movie itself, there are background shots like when they're driving down the roads. And they're on a coast road, and there are mountains behind them. Well, there are no mountains in Florida. There are large hills, but those hills are trash. They're actual garbage that is piled up so high in the landfill that they make this huge mound. But it's not as big as a mountain, and it wouldn't look like that from the car, and they didn't have those back in that day. The garbage mounds, those are much newer for Florida than Elvis Presley's movie, Clambake. But the next time you watch the movie, when you see the mountains in the background, that's California. And it was filmed in California. Now, they did film portions of this movie in Florida, but Elvis did not go to Florida. And Elvis did not film in Florida, and neither did any of the main cast. They just did some like B-roll shots in Florida. Elvis drove this incredible car in the movie. And you can see how beautiful it is. And I'm sure that no matter how much he disliked the movie itself, he must have liked this car. He must have liked getting into this car and driving it. He was a car nut. So he had to have loved this ability to see this car. And it's such a unique car. I believe it is a Corvette, but it's highly customized. Now, in this picture, I think in the background, it's a mountain. Which, again, that's not Florida. If that is a mountain. Could be wrong. Could just be the way the picture looks. But it looks like they're looking out into a mountain. And Linda says that Clambake was one movie that she thought Elvis hated the end product, and that she must admit the quality was bad. And Colleen's saying she's surprised Elvis didn't own one of these cars. Maybe on this test drive he didn't like it. Maybe that's why he didn't end up with it. I don't know. That's a good question, though. Why didn't he get this car if he liked it? So I have to assume he didn't like it. Now, was the quality of Clambake bad? I've had some other commenters say that they love Clambake. They do recognize it's not one of the greatest movies of all time, but they love it. A lot of them believe that the two movies he filmed previous to this one were much worse than this one. And one commented to me today that those two were so bad that coming into this one, Elvis may have been carrying a grudge from those other two, and that no matter how good or bad this one was, he was probably going to complain about the script. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think he definitely was carrying a snowball of resentment forward, and that it crashed into something on this production, and that something might have been the Circle G. And then by the time he got out there on the 5th, he was just very angry about the whole thing. And Elizabeth says that she thought Elvis did a great acting job, especially at the end of the movie when he fell for the girl and she was going to leave. And it wasn't the greatest movie, but he did a good acting job. And that's important, Elizabeth, to point out. He was very professional about it. The issues that he had, he confined to the Colonel and the studio executives. He didn't even go to the writers, I don't think, and say, this is a terrible writing. He doesn't go to the songwriters, or even the song, even Hill and Range, the people supplying the song, the publishing company. He goes right to these top guys, thinking that they'll work it out, that the next time it'll be better. And I think maybe he's done this a couple of times. We don't know, and we haven't taken a good enough look at any other period of his life to know. But it's not something that you just hear about, that he put up any complaints about anything. And Linda said it was just the movie looked so fake on the beach scene. Yes, it was a poor quality production. They really let him down on that. And I believe that these movies would have made, they felt like they were maxing out on the money they could make. But I think that if the movies were, A+ material, that they would make even more money. But that's just crazy me, who thinks that the quality of the plots and I don't see any problem putting songs into it if they're quality songs. Putting them together, well, that's a creative issue. And creative people should be able to make that work properly. If you have two great things, like chocolate and peanut butter, obviously you could put those together and they're going to taste great together. But you try to bring in two other ingredients, you're not going to get this same experience. And Linda says that she thinks that Elvis was sick of the same old for him. And I think it was a lot of the same old, although I think they did things specifically to try to appease Elvis and make him happier during the production, like this car. Like, it's a double whammy. You bring this car in, you put it on screen, you get all that production value on screen of this beautiful car, and all you've really done is rent it and have it brought over. You put Elvis in it, and suddenly it's 1,000% better than it was. Then you put a couple of beautiful girls next to it. Suddenly, we've got $1 million picture on the screen. And Elvis is really happy because he gets to play with this car. Now, the script that holds it all together, well, it's terrible. It's trash. But they've already got the cameras and everything. We got to film something. So if you're going to film something, at least they went out and got a beautiful car like this. And Linda says that Elvis wanted to be a serious actor, but the public wanted his voice. And Gunn says that her eyes never left Elvis, so she didn't notice the beach scene. That's funny, guy. And Linda says that Elvis is the beautifulest man on the planet, so she had trouble seeing that beach too, but it was bad and it would distract you. It was bad enough to distract you. And hi, Jen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you being here. And Colleen says that she watched something called The Rise and Fall of Elvis yesterday, and Jerry and Priscilla were saying that by 63, Elvis was disgusted with the movies he was making. I think that is very early in the timeline. I mean, he got back in 1960. He was kind of disappointed with GI Blues, but at the same time, he was ecstatic that production began before he even left Germany. So he was worried the entire time he was in the army there would be no career. And here the career was sparking up and getting started again before he was even out. And the army itself was sending people to be in the movie because they filmed parts of it over in Germany. Elvis wasn't in those parts, but they filmed parts of it. And people that Elvis knew that he was serving with, they were in those parts of the movie. And they got paid. So it was like a wonderful thing for them. And so Elvis got to help them all out in that way. So he did like GI Blues, even though it wasn't the greatest of all movies either. Then he got to do a couple of movies he really wanted to do, like Flaming Star. He got to go in that direction for a little bit. In 63, I think that's the year they filmed Follow That Dream, right? And he was incredible in that movie, and it was a wonderful script. So I have to be surprised if he didn't like that one. But you're right. We don't know because we haven't looked at any of that stuff ourselves. So we should go and take a look at that. But I think Jerry and Priscilla are off by more than 3 years. I think his disgust settles in 66. It starts to come in 65. He's tired by 64. He's terribly tired by 65. He's disgusted in 66. And he blows up in 67. And Linda says she also thinks Priscilla and Jerry were exaggerating. And Elizabeth saying that Wild in the Country was good also and extremely dramatic. So these were all chances for Elvis to stretch himself. And I think he was very disappointed with the box office on those. But how else would you rate yourself at that point in time? Like here on YouTube, we get the likes and you get the views and you get the watch hours and there's all kinds of stats they're constantly pushing at you. And no matter how bad you're doing, they're pushing one of them at you saying that you're doing great. And that incentivizes you to keep going. Well, the only stat that Elvis had was the dollars that came into the box office. He had his dollars that he got paid. That was one stat. And the other stat was, what did they say was coming in at the box office? Because that measured how many people wanted to see you. And Elizabeth says that Wild in the Country, it was pretty serious. There were some songs, but it was basically a serious movie. Right. And he never wanted to put any songs in, but I think he compromised at least a couple of times there to do some of these projects that he wanted to do. And I think he needed the song. He didn't want to put the songs in. He normally wouldn't have songs in a dramatic movie, but you don't normally have a guy that could sing as well as Elvis in a movie. So if the man can sing this well, we got to get his voice in here somehow on a song. And I don't know if that's in the background or he does it on screen or we make him a character that does sing, which would than mirror his life, but it feels like if he has that kind of talent, and I always felt like that was a waste with Sinatra, that he would show up in these movies, but I mean, Sinatra's not a great actor. He's okay, but he's like a character actor. I don't think he's strong enough to go watch a movie for. But that's just my opinion of Frank Sinatra. So, I do love Frank's songs. But if you guys have a different opinion, be sure to get it in there into the chat, into the comments. Yeah, that's my last Clambake picture there. Now, at some point while Elvis is filming all of this, there's this belief that he came back to the Circle G at some point. Some were saying that he came back in March, but when we went through the whole March calendar, it does not look like it was possible medically for Elvis to travel back to the Circle G while he was recovering from his concussion. And it was only a week, right? It wasn't, it was about 10-ish days. Not a full 2 weeks. So we don't, at least I don't believe he traveled back to the Circle G during March. There's information that he traveled back to the Circle G in early April during a pause in Clambake, and that he spent several weeks in Mississippi. Well, several weeks is like a month, right? Like that's the whole month. Or 3 weeks is most of the month. So I know he wasn't in Circle G for 3 weeks in April. That just can't be true. And they don't give us any dates. So I think this is another indication that nobody knew what, this wasn't a very well-tracked period. So nobody knew, as they look back, what was going on. And they're guessing, because he loved the Circle G, that he was returning. But I don't think he could have. And I haven't found any listings of the pause in the Clambake filming. Haven't been through all my resources yet, but haven't seen it yet. And Linda says that she agrees that the most serious of scripts were the best, but obviously the music was made to be there to increase the sales. Now that I do think was a problem, that the music was there to increase sales. That's the wrong reason. The reason's got to be because Elvis is a great singer, and then you have him sing a great song, and then hopefully the sales follow. But I agree with you, Linda, that those who created the songs were only interested in increased sales. And they went about that by cost cutting. So they put the least amount of effort into writing and producing the songs. And Gunn says that they only had the movies to see Elvis in when they went to the pictures, went to the theaters. And Colleen's saying, plus if there was music, they could put it on the album with it and make twice the amount of money. Now, it's not just about putting it on the album, Colleen. It's Elvis had contractual obligations to record a certain number of songs for RCA every year. They were paying him $300,000 a year up front against the royalties, but the contract included he needed to create more songs because they needed more material every year to be able to put out. Colonel and Elvis were using the soundtrack material to fulfill that part of the contract. The soundtracks didn't necessarily sell as well as some of his other non-soundtrack albums, but they sold very well and very consistently, which is something that almost no records do. So suddenly RCA had something very stable that they could count on. And that's another reason that he's making these recordings for them. And Linda says she thinks Frank was also a great actor and, of course, a great singer. I don't know if he was a great actor. I think he was a good character actor, but I don't know that he was any better than, say, Ernest Borgnine. But that's just my opinion. And I do appreciate yours. And Marion says that she skips many singing songs in other movies, but when Elvis sings, it's different. I know what you mean. It's hard when a song is made specifically to move a plot forward. I don't think that's the right reason to write or have a song either. The song's got to be about an emotional journey. And Colleen says that everything's different when it's Elvis. And Gunn says everything with Elvis I think is worth seeing and listening to. I'm trying to do that too, Gunn. So hopefully I'll link a lot of it here for you. And Linda says that something I said is exactly what she meant. And Elvis was the highest paid actor of that time. He was. And he wasn't just the highest paid actor. He was the highest collecting pay actor. So others may have had contracts that made it look like they were going to make more than Elvis. But when the accounting got all done, and Hollywood's very creative with its accounting, they didn't get their money, or they had to go fight for it. Elvis got paid before he performed. Like, he got 90% of everything up front. Now, sometimes they did a little bit on the back end, something that was going to be calculated. But the Colonel was very against that because he knew how the calculations ran. He would have calculated it that way himself. So he did not get into that. And Colleen says that he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Marion says that sometimes they started to make the recordings as cheap as possible, in my opinion. I think there was cost cutting that was put into place that had nothing to do with artistry. And I think it disgusted Elvis, and he didn't want anything to do with it. But he wasn't willing to fight back against it because it was so pervasive at that moment. And what would he be fighting for? A better song to put into this terrible movie? Now, if it was a great movie, if the script had been magnificent and the songs had all been terrible, not a doubt in my mind that Elvis would have thrown all those songs out and said, nope, we have to do better songs. But I think in his mind, the songs were matching the quality of the script. And, what's the point of having wonderful songs in the movie and fighting for that and investing your own energy into making this happen when ultimately the end product is going to be this movie? And Colleen says that she's sorry, but she does not care for Frank Sinatra. Not even the coffee song, because the coffee song is hilarious. You guys have never heard Frank's coffee song. Maybe it's called They Got a Lot of Coffee in Brazil. It is hilarious. And Linda says he couldn't wait to get out of those movie contracts. I think that's true, Linda. But he did collect a lot of money from them and up front, and he did enjoy that money. And now he's at the end of that contract. And I've been at the end of a lot of contracts. And I know exactly the way that he feels. And we promise ourselves, like that last payment you make on that 5-year contract on a car, and you think, I'm never going to do this again. And you're right, because the next one you signed up for 5.5 years. So it's even worse than it was before. So I understand right where Elvis was. I think we've all been there. Any of us who have any age at all and have purchased anything that we couldn't truly afford. Now, Elvis's wasn't about what he could afford, it's about what he was making, but it's all kind of the same. That's what contracts are like. And Linda says that some of his best songs came from the movies, and that's true as well. So they're not all terrible songs. I think there's a steady decline as they figure out how to milk the revenue streams. And I think that's true of all of his projects. After they've been running too long, all the nickels and dimes get squeezed out. And so when he shifts to something new, nobody knows exactly how to take advantage of it. And therefore, it's a newer, fresher product for him. It doesn't have all of the grift going on that he can see, because that's not invisible to Elvis. He knows these revenue streams and things that people are doing and how they're making their money. And Marion's asking, no, which coffee song? I think it's called They Got a Lot of Coffee in Brazil. That's at least one of the lyrics to it. They got a lot of coffee in Brazil. And Colleen says she doesn't know about the coffee song. It's funny. I think it's hilarious. And Linda says that, or Gunn agrees that with Linda that there were many good songs in the movies. And Marion says, I know Dean Martin's Birds and Bees song, and that it's funny. And Gunn says she liked Frank and Elvis Home from the Army Special. But speaking of Dean Martin, I wanted to make sure that we ended before 4 o'clock today, my time, 4 p.m., because every Friday, Dina Martin, who is Dean Martin's daughter, she puts on a live performance on YouTube. So she's doing it in a few minutes here. I just put the link into the chat so that you guys can all go to it. I'm not going to play a song today so that we can get out of here in time. Just got a couple of minutes that you could make it over if you want to and watch Dina Martin's live show. If you happen to go, if you would let her know in the chat that Hillbilly Cat History sent you, I would really appreciate it. I think it would be great. So I'm going to put her link in the chat one more time. And then I'm going to say to all of you, until I see you again, you keep on taking care of business. And we'll get together for the next one. I'm planning on doing one 10 a.m. my time tomorrow on Saturday. I'll see you guys in the next one. Keep on taking care of business.